We'll start the tour looking at the quality Group 1 and Group 2 varieties, and at the near end here we have the popular varieties of today, and as we go further along you'll see some interesting new varieties. With the plots, these were sown on the 4th of October. Anybody could guess the previous crop? Well, it was the cereal site last year, so it's the second cereal site, if you can say that. Don't just be judged by the way the plots look here, because as far as the recommended list is concerned, we have trials throughout the UK, and what we do is we test them in a wide range of different regions and soil types, and then we just then use the collective data to find out, well, how well these varieties perform. The front of the plot has had a robust fungicide program and also plant growth regulators. The far bit of the plot has had no fungicide, and you can probably tell that if you've been looking around that some of them look bright yellow. We'll come on to that later. And also they've had no plant growth regulator. So we'll start the tour, and then perhaps Julius would like to go through some commentary as far as the quality is concerned.
Thank you very much. I'm Julius Deane. I'm the wheat director of Carr's Flour Mills, based in sunny Cumbria. I'm glad we've brought some Cumbrian weather down for you today. We have 3 mills in the UK, Green's at Malden in Essex, a predominantly a bread flour mill, Carr's at Silloth, which is a bread and very large biscuit flour producer, and Hutchison's in Kirkcaldy, which is a biscuit flour and bread flour mill. Going on to the varieties here, 2 seconds on the difference between Group 1 and Group 2. The grouping is decided by millers, including ourselves, who do trials on these varieties when they are 3 years before they're commercialised. So we see these when these are just numbers, and they're testing them and their bread making and biscuit making capabilities of these varieties before they even have a name. Group 1 is a variety that's consistent every year at making good quality bread. Group 2 is the next stage. There's nothing wrong with it, but it can either be one that makes a bread in a blend with other varieties, or it's one that one year shows fantastic characteristics, next year not so good, so it doesn't show the same reliability or consistency as a Group 1. Solstice has been the banker. Solstice has been around for, I can't remember how many years now, 8, something like that. A very, very good, consistent, sound bread wheat. Makes a very nice white loaf. When we're doing testing of loaves, I mean, we had to do in January 32 loaves, and you can see the Solstice sticking out just by looking at it. Very good variety. It's showing its age a little bit now, but it's one we'll continue to like. Of the Group 2's Cordial is one that, again, we favour partly or mostly because of its whiteness. It's a very, very white flour, whereas some of the others can show slight yellowness there, which if you're making a white loaf, you want it to be white.
Just a few comments about the varieties. As you see with Solstice, it's a tall strawed variety, but it is quite stiff. So the thing on the disease front, it's watch for the mildew. It's quite weak for mildew, also for yellow rust and brown rust, and also for eye spot. But up and next to it you can see Cordial. Straight away it's a shorter variety. It's early maturing. You do need to watch the brown rust and the eye spot. Currently yellow rust looks pretty good. If I can just comment on some agronomic feature of Panorama, in the recommended list we do test the varieties for their resistance to Fusarium. The reason we do this is Fusarium is very important, not just because of the pathogen itself, but because they do produce mycotoxins. And Panorama has a rating of 7, which is the highest on the recommended list. So obviously the sort of weather conditions we've had, particularly yesterday and the few days with lots of showery weather at flowering, then we know that the risk of Fusarium is going to be higher this year. If you want to hear more about that, then if you go in the main stand here, then please speak to the researchers who are trying to refine the risk forecast, for more of a regional basis. So although it may not necessarily be a major component of the risk forecast, it's a move in the right direction to make sure that the variety is playing its part to minimise the risk of mycotoxins.
That is a very good point. Mycotoxins, it's not us that's deciding what the level are, it's an EU regulation of of mycotoxins into flower of 1250 parts per billion. The last year when we saw it was 2008, and there's some, I don't know whether it's concerned this year or not. That's one of the reasons I'm here, to try and find out, but it is not something you can blend away. If the wheat is over that level, it is not safe for human consumption. There's no question about it. Animal feed levels are 7,500, so you can see that if it's a wheat that is over the level of mycotoxins for human food use, then you've got a good chance of it being okay for animal feed use there. And the other group ones, just the newer ones here, Gallant has been around for 2 or 3 years now, and it's one we like. Anecdotally, the yields of Gallant do seem to be very, very handsome. The reliability of it seems good, and I think it has a future. Crusoe is a new one this year. Very easy to spot in the field, bright green like Shamrock of a few years ago. Early to say what will happen with it, but there is some in the ground this year, and destined to be quite a lot more in the ground next year there. The relative premiums of them are depending on what the requirement of them are. Cordial is a premium that is slightly lower than Solstice because it doesn't have quite the same universal use as Solstice does. The premium difference between Cordial and Solstice this year has been very, very close, of £1 or £2, so that one is quite close there. The other Group 2s generally are throwing sometimes lower proteins. I buy the Group 2s generally on a 12% rather than 13%. But they are throwing lower proteins because they're higher yielding. The two fit together. Protein dilution is something we all know about, that in a high yielding year, then the proteins will be down. But if the proteins are down, then we have to make up the protein in our flour with vital wheat gluten and other more costly additives to try and bring it back again. So, real fag packet stuff, then, if you're saying about somewhere around £20 for a Group 1, just under that for a Cordial. The Group 2s, I don't differentiate in our usage for some of the Group 2s which we use for breads that don't have to rise. Imagine a pita bread, a chapati, a pizza base, those sort of things there, where you don't have to have the same structure of a big loaf standing up like that. So if you were going to say £20, 19, 18 for Cordial, and 10-ish for a lower protein Group 2. That's Panorama is slightly better. Yeah, Einstein for us is slightly yellow. That's why we prefer Panorama to Einstein.
Can I just mention some of the agronomics? For a start, with Gallant, it's higher yielding than Solstice by about 2%. It's also an early maturing variety. You do need attention to disease though, because it is quite susceptible to brown rust, and actually the rating for other diseases, septoria and rusts, is around a 5, so that's one where it will need attention to detail. Crusoe, as far as its agronomics, is a very interesting looking variety. For a start, it will give you a similar yield to Gallant, but it has the highest septoria rating on the recommended list at a 7. It's not to say that you can't just ignore septoria, and we know this year the pressure from septoria has been higher, particularly over the April weather, where it did nothing but rain most of April, which would both suit the disease and also it would mean there'd be fewer spray days. The other thing septoria needs in order to develop is heat. So what then happened is as soon as the warmer it gets, then the faster the disease comes in. So that's a very good characteristic to have. The other thing about Crusoe, it has good resistance to yellow rust. Now, last year what happened, we did find a new race that came on. Unfortunately, with these yellow rust varieties, what happens is they name them after the variety they were first found on. Hence, it's called the warrior race. And what we didn't know at the time is, well, how badly affected all the recommended list varieties would be at the adult stage. So as part of the virulence survey, what has been happening is that they've inoculated all the varieties, and obviously we then initially find out how susceptible they are as seedlings, but we then find that varieties change as they age. Now the good news for Crusoe is that it is resistant to the new warrior race at an adult stage. So you'll hear an awful lot said about yellow rust, but currently the good news is that it remains resistant. What we do find with the recommended list, the ratings are done on the data from last year, and what we've done with the yellow rust is updated the topic sheet so that we're giving the information as we provide it. Something else that we can link into the recommended list going forward, because things do change both regionally and as the seasons go on, is as we do more monitoring, is to make sure any unusual information about breakdowns and resistance are widely publicised, and that's perhaps a way how we can link some of the work, other work HGC is doing with the recommended list. As far as other diseases are concerned, you may need to watch eye spot. It has a 5 rating, so you'll probably find you need to deal with that at your growth stage 31 to 32 time. Fusarium head blight, I mentioned the highest number we have so far is 7. This has a 6, so it's at the higher end, compared with all the other varieties.